Welcome back to Blurred Summits. Today we have Tess Tregellas with us. She is a comedian based out of New York. She's worked on a ton of projects. She's also an actor and a filmmaker, and she's here to talk to us today about comedy, the skill of comedy, and how we can implement comedy into our own lives to hopefully make them a little bit more interesting. Thank you so much for coming on today, Tess.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
So just really quickly, can you tell us what made you want to get into stand-up?
Honestly, I think I was a middle child and just needed more attention in my life. To be being completely honest, I think that's where it started. But I always did theater as a kid and musicals and plays and stuff. And then I majored in acting in college and was I always loved performing, and I love that I could write and perform at the same time with stand up. So that's kind of how I got started in all, because I didn't know if I wanted to write or perform, and then stand up I could do both. So that's kind of how I got into it all.
Awesome. Was there like a lot of growing pains with stand-up, or was it something, you just got on the stage and it was all good to go?
I'm still in the growing pains of stand up. I think you never get fully grown in that. I mean, you can reach a certain amount of success, but I think um, there's definitely always a little bit of growing pains of like, am I really funny? I don't know. Um, but yeah, I mean, definitely at the beginning, it's rough. It's rough for everybody because it's an art form where you have to like really put yourself out there, and that's scary, and you have to know yourself. And I think knowing yourself is very difficult to do as a in your 20s, and then putting that onto a stage is also very difficult, and making people laugh. So there's always growing pains when you're starting something new and scary. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely, you have to go through that to get to the other side for sure.
So when what kind of got you into stand-up? Was it a friend? Was it, your own, you just jumped right in, or?
I mean, I think a lot of people say this where it's like, I've always wanted to try it. And then once I tried it, yeah, I think that's like everyone wants to try it once. And then you go up and you bomb and you're like, I never want to do that again. But I think after the first time, I bombed for sure. Like maybe got my big moment. I was like, okay, it's my first open mic. I'm gonna crush it. I'm gonna show the world what I can do. And I go up and I do, and there's a certain amount of like mic etiquette that people do where it's like, you take the microphone out and you move the stand to the side. It's like that's like a common routine that people do. But I was scared to do that, so I didn't touch the mic, and I did my jokes without touching the mic. And then I was like, I got a little comfortable, and I took the mic out of the stand and I hit myself in the face taking it out, and that got the biggest laugh. And I was like, are you kidding me? I spent hours practicing this, and that's what got the laugh. So I think after that, it's like you do it once and you bomb, and then I had a need to do it again. I was like, okay, I like the adrenaline. I like talking, so it all checked out. But in terms of a friend, I mean, there's always so many people like comedians I looked up to where or actors where I was like, oh, they started in stand up, and I think it scared me the most. So I was like, oh, I have to do this first, I guess.
Nice. What's something that, you wish you knew when you first started about stand-up that looking back now, you're like, okay, that would have helped me a ton?
Yeah, definitely do it. Like, if you're thinking about doing it, just try it, and don't put like such high stakes on your process, because it is a long process. It's not, you don't roll out of bed and go to a mic and then get a Netflix special. It's you have to put in the reps, and by reps I mean going to mics and trying out new material and perfecting one bit. I think that actually, yeah, that's what I would say. If you're gonna like cut this, like say this part where it's like, don't be afraid to do one bit over and over and over again, and just change words, change pauses, change how you say it, because that's where it gets good. And that's where it's like, it's almost like jazz where you know the notes, but then you get to like play around. So I would say notes would be to do it and to keep doing it and to not be afraid to hone in on something and really focus on one bit versus trying to do 1,000 bits, to kind of
Mm.
focus in on one thing. Yeah.
Has so with comedy, I'm kind of getting the idea that it's more than the joke itself that sells the performance, right?
Hmm.
It matters a lot about the little things,
Yes.
and with that, you can't really get that other than practice. Like you can't really train a person to make the right pauses. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can't it's not you can give people notes, but it's going to be different every time. Different crowds, different theaters, you never really know, but um it is definitely a thing where yeah, you have to like you can definitely learn it. You can definitely learn how to be funny. You can learn how to like tell a joke, but I do think a lot of it's not what you say, it's almost how you say it. Like you were saying, it's like you
Mm,
could say something that's not funny at all, but have a funny character say it or different personality or a certain dialect, and for some reason it's funny. And sometimes things are funny and we don't know why they're funny. We just think they're funny. And I think that's what's great about stand up is like you get that reaction immediately. You don't have to wait for the comments in the video or whatever, or the likes, or the if it's viral, or it doesn't matter. It's
mhm.
like in that moment you get the laugh and then you get the immediate sense of rush and um, dopamine to your brain pretty much, you know.
Yeah. Have you seen comedy translate into other parts of your life where you've seen like, okay, since I've started comedy, this has been so much easier for me, or I'm able to like, make people laugh and get this or something like that?
Yeah, I think well, I started in improv, and I think improv has a really great way of training your brain to find the funny and to make witty comments. And I think that that has come a long way for communication, for, presentations. Like if you're able to make someone laugh, then you're able to make them listen, and then you're able to get your point across. So I think comedy is definitely transferable into other assets of life. I mean, you want to be someone who is fun to be around, and comedy is the great way to show, um, that you're someone who is likable, and people want to be around people who are likable and funny, but also it's a great way to communicate and to build relationships and to find something that is difficult and find fun in it and find humor and levity. And I think that can go a long way. And it's a good coping mechanism. I think of all the coping mechanisms, I sometimes I'm sure it can be annoying if you're going through something serious and someone's cracking a joke, but
Yeah.
it's maybe not the best timing. But I think it's you see people who are working 9 to 5s, and the one person who comes in and adds a little bit of humor, adds a little bit of levity, it totally turns around people's day. And I've seen that, in myself, but also in other people. Um, and so it's an interpersonal relationship, as well as a tool to use, to work more efficiently and effectively. Because if you're having fun, then you're more likely to do work. Work is fun, you're gonna do it. If it's not fun, you're not gonna want to do it.
Right.
You know?
If, let's say, we have a ton of students that watch this podcast, right? That's our main audience. A student wants to be funny, but they don't know how, right? They want to get into comedy, maybe not even comedy. Maybe they just want to be funny like in their own personal lives. What do you
Hmm.
kind of tell them? How does a person get more funny?
Well, I think you have to learn your sense of humor. I think watching other comedians, watching specials, watching people that you admire, and kind of taking note of the types of jokes they tell. And then also not being afraid to go into the unknown. It is scary. It is intimidating to go into an improv class or a stand-up show or whatever it is. It's scary, but knowing that it's not the high stakes that you think it is, and to really just do it. I think so many times people get scared because there's this big expectation to be funny, but I think also your best audience is at a cocktail party or at a dinner, or like try your jokes out there, slip them into the conversations. If you have a funny story that you always tell about the one time you went to the airport and something crazy happened, like tell that and notice when people are laughing. Notice when can you make that story more interesting. There are audiences everywhere, so trying out your jokes doesn't necessarily have to be at a open mic. I mean, I think a lot of my relatives now are noticing that I take a lot of things they say and put them into my stand up. And they're like, "Oh, that's so fun." And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, if someone says something funny or something funny happens, like write it down. Get a humor notebook. I have mine literally right here. I constantly writing down little jokes, even if it's on your phone. Something funny happens, you have an interesting thought, start writing it down because you're gonna forget, but also it trains your brain to be able to notice those things as they keep coming up. And you're able to kind of spot them. And this is a quote, I'm gonna butcher it. I feel like people shouldn't quote other people if they don't know the quote, but it's basically like you, it's not, funny things don't happen to comedians. They just see things in a funny way. Like you can take something that is so boring, like going to the airport or making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and you can make that funny. You can make grocery shopping funny. You can make anything funny. It's just a matter of looking at it through a humor lens and a humor perspective. So once you kind of train your brain to do that, you're able to almost see the world in like technicolor, you know? It's like, oh, okay, like this person, maybe this person is annoying to me, but also they're a character, they're funny, that this is the type of person. You're always like studying. And I always say so most of the time when people meet me, I'm very quiet at the beginning, like I'm quiet and reserved, but it's just because I'm taking notes. I'm reading the room to be like, oh, what kind of jokes can I tell? Can I go dark? Can I go sarcastic? What's the
Right.
vibe here? So I think listening is a great skill that comedians have, is being able to read a room and be like, oh, okay, so like this is college students. So like I could make a joke, I could make a sex joke, I could make like certain jokes will land with them, but I'm not gonna make a joke about a 401k because like no one wants to think about that right now. So like
Yeah,
reading the
exactly.
audience, you have to be able to see what the room reads, and I think that makes a great comedian because they're able to really just read a room. It's almost like it's like a code. You're able to look around, and you get a heckler, you're able to, shut them down without being mean. You're able to use humor to tell someone to shut up. I think like that is the art form of stand-up comedy. Like you can have a special, but if you're a live comedian, like a live performer, you have to be able to be adaptable and think on your feet.
Yeah. I'm just thinking like when you said that, the name that
Mhm.
popped into my head was Andrew Schultz. He's really great at like reading a room and like talking with the crowd, and some of like I
Yeah.
think his biggest like most viewed work is just him talking to some hecklers or you know just reacting to people
Yeah.
in the crowd.
I'm not great with crowd work. I try not to do it. I should do it more, because I think there's so much opportunity in it. It is scary though because you don't know, you don't want to, you just don't know people, and
Yeah.
especially like now as people are coming out of a pandemic, like people are like it's a sensitive time, and you don't want to, you know, hurt anyone's feelings, or at least I don't. I'm not an aggressive comedian. I want everyone to like me. I want to be friends with everyone. Like we'll all go drinks after or whatever. Some comedians are not like that. It's like me versus the audience, but you know,
Mm,
I'm a golden retriever. I want everyone to like me, and you know, um, but yeah, no, I think crowd work is a whole new level, and I love. There's a comedian, he's British. I'm gonna blank on his name right now because it's Sunday and foggy. Um, shoot, Jimmy Carr. His name is Jimmy Carr. Watch his videos because he basically asks the audience to heckle him. He's like, does
mm.
anyone have anything to say? And then he has these quick one-liners that are just so good. And you know, he's able to he learns three things about them, where they live, what's their name, and what they do for a living, and is immediately able to quickly make a joke. And I think um, that is incredible to watch, even on film.
Awesome. One thing that I kind of got super interested in, and I want to take a little bit of a step back to, is you were talking about your joke journal, or you,
Yeah,
right? So, what is that?
this is a book of nonsense. It is truly nonsense. It's anything that it's a lot of my sets. So usually if I am going to an open mic or a performance, I'll write down my sets, not word for word, just almost like one worded things. I don't know if you've seen Mike Birbiglia, but he does a similar thing where he writes like one word and it's like about a whole joke. So he does like a 5 minute joke about um trees. He'll put like pine on it and it'll be
Mm,
like, okay, this is so you know your order, because there are certain times when you in a set, if you have 5 minutes, you're gonna want to like, you know, you want to get a laugh in the first 30 seconds just because it feels good, and then you're like on a high of the laugh. Then you can like do some other, you know, other jokes, but you want to end on your best, you know, your best material, and what you want to be remembered as. So, it's a lot of that. It's a lot of like one worded things. It's like a shopping list. If I recently lost one of my books, it was very sad, but I recently lost it, and I was like, someone's gonna find this and be like, what kind of grocery list is this? Because it is so weird. It'll be like mirror, gym, gynecologist, spoon. It's like, what is happening? But it's a lot of that, but it's also ideas. It's premises. It's you know, you don't know when an inspiration is going to strike, which is very exciting. But it's also you want to be able to like document it, and then you're able to go back and see, oh, okay, what do I want to try today? What do I want to play with? What can what's a funny word? You'll be somewhere, and someone recently said trickle to me, like it was like it trickled down, and I was like, trickle is such a funny word. It's so random and weird. It's like tickle and like trip, and you're like, what's happening? And so I wrote
yeah.
down trickle in my notebook because I was like, oh, that's a funny word. How can I use that in a set? Which I probably won't, but it's like you just write down whatever comes to you and inspires you, I guess.
What do you think are some unexpected life lessons that you got out of comedy or stand up specifically?
Yeah. Unexpected. I think, ooh, that's a good question. I feel like so many times I come on podcasts and I learn something about myself. I'm like, oh, I didn't think I would say that. And I'm giving advice, but I need to listen to my own advice. Do you ever feel like that, where you're like, I'm
Yeah.
telling people to do this, but like I should really do this? Um, I
That's the
think
story of my
unexpected,
life. Yeah.
right? It's like you're like, you know, you have a friend going through a breakup, and you're giving like guy advice, but like really, you should just listen to that. The advice you're telling, it's so silly. But anyway, I digress. Unexpected life lessons would be slow down, like take your time. There's no rush in this. I think so many times, I mean, you see people who start comedy in their 50s. You see people who started, you know, in their when they're teenagers, and they reach great success in their 20s, but there's no rush to do any to do it. It takes time. It takes a lot of time, and I'm still learning that to be where I am now, I've progressed so much in the last 5 years, but in the next 5 years, it's like, oh, I'm only gonna keep if I keep going at it, which I plan to do, you know, um, if I keep going at it, I'll just get better. And it does take a lot of time. Also, finding your people is really important. You want to if you bomb on stage, you want to come off and see a friend and be like, wow, that was awful. And you're like, yep, that hurt a lot. And you want to be able to find your community. I think there is such an amazing community in comedy. If you and you're not like out of college, it's so easy to make friends in college. You could literally you're surrounded by people you know. And I think for me, when I left college and was starting, the real world of it all, it's harder to make friends. It really is. And it can be, you go to work and then you're tired, maybe go to the gym, but like no one talks at the gym. So it's hard to make friends. But I think stand up and comedy, you have to be yourself on stage and people know who you are. And it's a great way to make friends, make a community, and meet people who are so different from you. I have, friends who I'm friends with, and I think, oh wow, I would never have met this person in any other context because we live completely different lives. But it's a great way to broaden your net and to feel a sense of purpose and community. And the stand-up world is, yeah, it's intimidating sometimes, but finding your people and your friends is really important. But also, it's a great way to make friends. It's a great way to get yourself out there and meet new people that you would literally never be in contact with and hear their honest truth. I think that's also another life lesson. It's like you have to listen, and it's great to be able to listen to someone who has a completely different perspective on life than you and hear their truth. So I think that's kind of a big life lesson. Make friends in comedy. That's the thesis, I guess.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely noticed that, especially being in university, where when it was in person, it's dead easy to make friends. Like you're literally in a lecture hall with 300 other people who are all interested in the same thing as you, at least for the most part. So so you could turn to any one person and most likely you'll get along, you'll be great friends with them. Since we came online, that's been super difficult, right?
Yeah.
And it's harder to meet more people, it's hard to do that. So in these kinds of maybe online settings or out of university, how do you get to know a person in a comedy club, right? Or maybe not a comedy club, but just in general. How can students get to know people and make new friends in different environments?
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine going to college. I was lucky. I graduated 2019, so I mean, no one's lucky during the pandemic, but I was fortunate to have my senior year, and my heart breaks with those people who didn't, and even now, people who are still online, it's so hard. But I think in now that things are opening up, if you're going to a comedy club and you want to talk to someone who performed, just go up to them and be like, "Hey, great set, great job. I really liked your blank blank." People love compliments. No matter, I mean, maybe they might find it annoying, but just like sometimes it feels good to make someone else feel good. But also, comedy is a great way to see to really gauge someone immediately. Who's your favorite comedian? You immediately know, like, okay, if it's Jim Gaffigan, kind of a vibe that they are, and you can kind of cater what you're saying to them. TV shows, like if someone likes The Office versus How I Met Your Mother, it's a different vibe. It's interesting to kind of see those things. But I think in terms of comedy is a great way to like release tension, and when people are meeting new people, it's tense. You don't like, what are we going to talk about? The weather? Maybe you run out of weather material and there's an awkward silence, and just being able to use humor to release that tension is great. It's a great way to make friends. And if you're the person who can make someone laugh. Where is your college? I'm sorry, I don't.
It's up north in Canada, in
In
Alberta.
Canada.
Yeah.
Okay. So, is there public transportation, or do you guys walk mostly?
No, there's public transportation. Yeah.
Okay. Because my college campus, it was like very much a walking campus. Like no one really, there was a bus, but no one
Oh,
really took it. But now that I'm in New York, public transportation is so entertaining. It's crazy. Like the things that happen on a subway, you really never know. So like being able to notice what's going on in your immediate surroundings is very important, but also um to be able to make a joke about something that's happening in real time is fun. I was on the subway recently, and this guy was counting his money, like $20 stacks. And me and
that's
this guy
bold.
looked at him, right? And I think he must have been a waiter or something, because it was like a thick wad of cash. There were like 20s, ones, whatever. And he's counting it. And me and this guy look at each other, and we were like, I would never do that. And he was like, me
Yeah.
neither. And I was like, that is so not smart, because someone could steal that from him immediately, and then it's all gone. It's not like debit card, you could freeze it or whatever. It's like hard cash, so like he could get robbed. And then we had this whole riff where we were like, I mean, we're not gonna rob him, but like someone could. It's like, no, but not us. We would never do that. And it was a perfect stranger, and it's like that's a fun way to be able to just like have a little moment with someone who's literally a stranger. But that's not a tip to talk to strangers. I'm not advocating that, but sometimes you run into people who in the same context you're like, this is insane. But yeah, how to make friends through comedy. Go to an open mic. It's a great way to meet people and get out of your head and out of your comfort zone as well.
I'm going to take you back a little bit. Can you think back to when you were a student, and can you think of an example where comedy, you were like, okay, thank God I was funny, because comedy really helped me in that situation?
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. So I was auditioning for colleges in acting, and for acting, you have to do a monologue. You have to do one that's serious and one that's funny. And obviously, I love the one that was funny, and the serious one was a little out of my comfort zone. But um, they want to see you. They want to see who you are. And I think I was the last person to audition. It was like 7 o'clock on a Friday night. I was the last person. And as I was leaving, I was like, oh, that's a wrap, because I was literally the last person, and they got a kick out of it, and they thought it was funny, and I was able to kind of connect with them, and I got into the school, which was great. But I think that was a time where I was like, oh, I'm glad I said something that was funny. Not that I wasn't planning on saying that, but I'm glad I didn't have the barrier to be like, no, Tess, don't be funny. This is a very serious audition process. It's like, no, like let's all like, we're all people. Like it's been a long day, and kind of noticing that, I think made me stand out, from other people who maybe are just after their audition say thank you, that was great. Do you have any questions? No, I'm great, thank you. So it's like, how do you stand out? How do you make yourself seem different? I will also say though that if it seems like it's planned or in disingenuous, is that a word?
Yeah.
Disingenuine.
Seems
Sure.
seems like a word.
It seems legit. I feel like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
We'll
Um,
make it a word. It's fine.
yeah, when I went to college, but and now I still make up words. I'm like the modern day Shakespeare. It's great. Um, I think if it's planned and it seems forced, people can tell that. Um, so I think if you try to be funny, you're not going to be funny. Like if you're
Mm,
actively trying to do it, um, it comes off as planned or robotic. But in a comedic setting, you should plan to be funny. But in life, I think if you say a joke and it doesn't work, what happens? There's an awkward silence. That's it, and maybe you sweat a little bit, but you get through it, and you're fine. There have been times where I have made jokes that didn't help me, that didn't, it wasn't a great time to tell a joke, and I learned from that as well. It's a good way to be able to kind of to balance that. Comedy has helped me in certain situations, but it's also maybe not. Maybe people were like, "Oh, she's always joking," and they need, we need someone more serious. So, it has its ebbs and flows and pluses and minuses, but I guess hopefully that answered your question. If not, I gave people a made up word, and I think that's good.
Is there like a indicator? Let's say somebody isn't naturally funny, right? They're really bad at reading a room. Are there some, rules of thumb that a person can follow to see, okay, you know what, maybe now I should shut up?
Sure. I mean, laughter is a good indicator. If no one's laughing, maybe, and you're trying to be funny, then you can take a hint. But in terms of like trying to be funny, if you're actively trying to implement humor into your day-to-day life, there's so much structure in comedy. You have rule of threes. If you're saying a list, anytime you say a list, if you have I have to go to the grocery store and I have to get eggs, bacon, and cheese, that's a list of three things. It's a pattern. But if you, on the third thing, you make it crazy, you're like eggs, bacon, and I have to get my mom because I forgot her there or something. It's like you can take something that was a really bad example. That's so bad. But I should be better at this. But anyway, you take the rule of three and you can implement that. If I'm promoting myself, I'm like an actor, comedian, and I usually say avid list maker because I love making lists, but also I'm making a list in that moment. So if you have a list, use the rule of three, try to make it fun, try to make it stand out. If you are writing your resume, I mean, depending on what the job is, but maybe you just for yourself put a little joke in there. I was a intern and for a development company. And basically, I had to research a bunch of stuff, which was really cool. But it was a lot of internet stalking. And so I put that in my resume. I was like, I'm really good at finding people on the internet and like getting their contact information, which is creepy. But I had to do that for the show. And I put it in my resume and someone was like, oh, I thought that was funny. Or I used to do dialect coaching, which is like different accents and stuff like that. So I would go to a show and, teach people how to do British, RP British, which is like, 1800s kind of style. But I put it in my resume, and part of it I was like, oh, I'm really good at convincing guys at bars that I'm British or Australian. Like that's a skill I have, but like it's at the bottom of my resume, so I'm assuming people like obviously don't read it. And I'm curious to see if someone reads that and they're like, oh, that's funny, then you kind of stand out and they'll bring it up to you and you're like, oh yeah, I put it in there because I really don't think people will read it. And if someone reads the fine print, then it's then they stand out in my mind where it's like, oh wow, you're actually reading my resume, which you'll probably get into because you're applying for jobs and stuff. Or what year are you?
I'm graduating next year, so yeah, pretty soon.
Exciting, very exciting. So yeah, you got to get your resume and your cover letter, and that is so exhausting. It's so exhausting to do that, and putting in some comedy, even for yourself, to be like, oh, this is kind of funny, and I'll throw it in there. That's fun. But yeah, so rule of threes. Other cues could be, if you're, a great thing to do is to take a joke that someone else has written and try it out. Like, there's no harm in saying, finding a joke from your favorite comedian and bringing it up in a conversation because they already wrote it. That you're just practicing, saying the words and finding the timing and trying to impersonate them. And that's there's no copyright rules on that. You can totally try that out, and it's a great way to, you don't have to create comedy every day when you wake up. You can curate it. You can take it from other people. You can share memes. You can make a funny video or share a funny video. I think even then, I'm sure, do you have like those chats, those like Instagram people that you send like very specific memes and things just to those people? Like me and my sister, We're very close. We don't talk a lot. The only form of communication is we love pimple poppers. I don't know if you,
Oh my God. Yeah.
it's disgusting, but we love that. And we send each other those, or people like falling. I think it's funny and it's sad, but I think it's funny when people, wipe out on a skateboard or whatever. It's so bad, but that's our only form of communication because we have that sense of humor. And then I know she's okay. I know she's fine, and
Hmm.
so being able to, you don't have to create it. You don't have to have the funniest tweets or whatever. You can curate it and take what someone else has made and share it very specifically with someone who that's their sense of humor. Like you're not gonna send your mom the same thing you send your best guy friend or your girlfriend or whoever. It's gonna be
Hmm.
very specific. And so being able to, you know, you don't have to have the pressure of, this is my creation, I wrote this. You can really just try out what other people are doing already, and share that.
One of the big things I'm kind of getting is that, at least like, with the resume thing, writing in little fun things in your resume and stuff like that, you need to have a certain degree of self-confidence, I would say, to be able to be
Yeah.
able to, write that in your resume and like openly put that out there, and even be like a stand-up comic. What are some things that somebody who doesn't necessarily have that self-confidence built up, what are some tips that you would give them?
Um, that's a good question. I'm not a very confident person. Like I think every comedian who comes off like I'm super confident, like everyone is so insecure. And so I think noticing that is really important. So if you're thinking, "Oh, I'm not funny, I'm not confident," even people who seem confident aren't confident. So you know what I mean? Comedians go up and they're like, "Oh, like I have anxiety, I have depression." I think that, the mental health has become so important, and it should. But I think comedy is a great way of kind of showing people, their truth. Bo Burnham came out with a Netflix special recently, but he talked about he would have anxiety attacks while performing. You wouldn't see it, but he would feel it, and it would be, he'd be performing to thousands of people and having an anxiety attack, and
Hmm.
that's real and that's truthful. So I think you don't, even the people who you are like, oh, they've made it, they're, professional comedian, they're still, people who are insecure. Everyone is so insecure. I'm insecure, and like that's okay, and you're around that energy. But to kind of gain more confidence, when you get a laugh, it does give you more confidence. Like when someone laughs at a joke of yours, or you make someone laugh, you get a rush of confidence and a rush of adrenaline, and um, that will keep building your confidence. Um, but in terms of, there's there's nothing bad on the other side of trying something new. I think comedy is a great way to try something, and if you fail, it's like thousands of people have failed before. The people who are famous and make lots of money doing this, they had to start somewhere too. So starting is a great thing, but I think for, it does take I guess a sense of confidence, but I think giving yourself permission to fail is important, but also um, noticing when humor can help you, can make you stand out more efficient, and just an an all around well rounded person. But I don't know if that answered your question. I guess I just said that I'm not confident, and then I moved on to nothing else. But if you're not confident in yourself, just know everybody is not confident in themselves. Everybody's making it up. It's so interesting. I even put up, and I have like, people code switch for various reasons and whatnot, but it's very interesting when I'm talking to comedians, I'm a totally different person than when I'm talking to, business people, or
Hmm.
um you have to kind of be able to navigate that and know that you have this skill in your, if you are funny, or maybe you have to be able to read the room first. So being quiet is definitely not a bad thing. I don't think if you're going into an interview and you're, crushing jokes left and right, you gotta lighten it up. But knowing that you have it in your back pocket of like, I have humor, I have a sense of humor is a great skill to have when it's appropriate. Um, I think that's the biggest thing. It's like if you're not confident, don't try a risque joke in an interview. Like that's not going to make you feel good. But if you have if you're able to bond with someone, you don't necessarily have to make a joke to be able to make someone laugh. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be set up punchline. Um, you're walking up to your interview and the stairs are super, you have to walk up like 6 flights of stairs. And you're like, oh yeah, I got a good workout in before I came here. Ha ha ha. Yeah, it's relatable. I get it. It's not necessarily like laugh out loud, but you're able to kind of bond over that. But yeah, I don't think doing comedy gives you more confidence. But I think knowing you have a sense of humor and knowing that humor can help you can give you more confidence.
Hmm.
Because I think there's this like idea that like, oh, comedians, they've got it all together. They're so brave. It's like, no, we're very insecure people.
Right.
This is our coping
And I think
mechanism.
that's super reassuring because, from the outside world looking in, whenever I see, a stand up comedy special or, a little show, it seems from the outside like it's very well put together. But just
Yeah.
knowing that, what turns out comedians they're humans just like the rest of us, just knowing
Yeah.
that fact reassures you to take that pressure off of yourself, right? That, I don't have to be 100% confident, 100% great all the time, and I can still do well despite that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think comedians, it does take a lot of time to do what they do. It's not a overnight success story. It's 10 years of work. And so many comedians are still working. I mean, there's certain I think what's really interesting is listening to kind of the backstory of comedians. Steve Martin in his book talks about how he was anxious and was doing these like tours and was lonely and like didn't love it, and then he kind of moved to film and stuff. So it's like it's I think what makes it human is also hearing those things, those backstories of those people that you admire. And um it's still life, things life still happens even if you're trying to be funny all the time. It's um I think great comedians are able to take truth and, yeah, sure, make it funny, but also relay a message and um, change perspectives.
Yeah. What's something that you want to improve within the next year within your maybe stand up, acting, filmmaking?
I what do I want to improve? I think there's so much. Oh my goodness. I'm not pausing because I'm like, oh, I'm perfect. No, I'm pausing because I'm like, oh, where do I start with this? I want to improve on being on stage and um, really being myself, because so many times I go up and I know what works now. Like usually when I go up, it's like 5 minutes. You really only have 5 minutes to like make a good impression. And I feel like I still find myself putting on this persona of I'm a stand-up comedian, watch me do jokes, versus like,
Mm,
oh, I'm not fully myself on stage yet. And I can sense that, like, because I have friends who are like, why don't you put what you just did in your stand up? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. It's like I want to be more comfortable with like who I am and bringing that to the stage. Um, so that's a big thing. That's a more of like a personal like growth thing, but I think I want to be able to take that and put it into my performance. Um, also, I obviously want to create more content. I really want to um, start bringing in more musicality to my stand up because I started in theater. I love musical theater. I love that. And I've seen so many comedians who are doing that and it's, it's alternative and, in stand up it's very like all you have is a mic, but I think bringing more musicality into my material will help me with that and not being afraid because I'm so scared to sing. Like I some people may be afraid to do stand up, but like I can sing and I did it for a long time, but I don't want to put it in my stand up because it's not, you know, it's not a stand up kind of vibe. But I
Right.
think um I would like to try to do that more and yeah, there's so many things I want to improve. Videos, I want to make more videos. It's just like not a lot of time in the day, It's
Right.
like
Yeah.
you're doing so many things and then you're like, "Oh, it's interesting. It's an interesting journey. But I'm sure if I were to listen to this podcast 5 years from now, hopefully I do those things, but also I may not, and that's okay. I hope.
Yeah. No, I'm sure this is going to be a great year for you, for sure.
Oh
But
yeah. I mean, for everyone. Everyone needs a comeback here. You're coming back strong.
that's my prediction. I was thinking, I was like, listen, you after there's like this slump, it was like a year and a half slump, right?
Mm,
So it's about to my prediction is it's gonna go wild for the next year, but who knows? I'm usually wrong.
100%. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be better. That's what's important. Is that it's gonna be
Exactly.
better every
Absolutely.
day.
So there's one scenario we always like to ask our guests, and I'll ask it to you as well. Imagine that you're going on a hike, right? We all know that you're going on a hike. There are some things you can bring. They'll help you get to the top of that mountain, right? Bring some hiking sticks. It'll help you. Some hiking boots, a couple of snacks. Those things, they help you on your journey up, right? Now imagine that this hike is your life, right? And the top of that mountain, that's the peak of your stand-up career. That's, the peak of your achievements. That's where you want to be. You want to be at the top of that hike.
Yeah.
Or sorry, at the top of that mountain. What are 3 characteristics you would tell people to bring with them on their hike that would help them reach the top of that mountain?
I'm glad you asked. I thought no one would ever ask me that question.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought you were gonna say like what's at the top, and I was gonna be like, what? I don't know. I don't know. I was like, oh God, this is gonna be so okay. That's a great question. I'm glad you ask everyone that. Okay, kindness, number one. Be kind. Oh my goodness. Um, jealousy and bad energy. It's just like it's not worth it. Just be kind. I think that's number one for me. Um, I guess honesty goes in that too. But yeah, kindness. Um, let's see, what other characteristics do people need to bring on a hike to their peak of life? Oh my goodness. Um, I mean, always bring a sweater because you just never know. You never know. And your mom will tell you to bring a sweater, and I'm going to tell you right now, just bring a sweater. Um, okay, so kindness, I would also say, I don't know if this is a characteristic. Oh, I guess it could be. I guess determination, is that a characteristic? Like
Yeah.
perseverance. Being able to kind of, yeah, that's a good one. Perseverance, to get to the top of the mountain. And knowing that it's okay to take a detour, but you're still, persevering to the same goal. So kindness, perseverance, and um, I don't know. This is hard.
We stumped you.
You stumped me. Well, I'm talking about rules of three, and now I'm like, can't even think of a third thing on the list.
Your mom at the store. That's the the
My
third
mom
thing
at
to
the
bring.
store. Yeah, I forgot my mom at the store. So stupid. Oh my goodness. Yeah, bring your mom on the hike because she'll know everything. She will. Oh my gosh. My mom is so funny. She does know everything. Like she would like she'll know if it's gonna rain before people do. I don't know. It's a weird moms trust your mom. But um kindness, perseverance, and should I say humor? Should I say comedy? Like, is that too basic?
If you think that that's gonna be useful, then yeah, why
I
not?
mean, I think it'll help me
We're not grading
specifically.
you on this, so it's
No, I feel like that. You may graduate from college, but you're always getting graded. I don't know what I'm
right.
getting in the grade of life, but I wish I had a report card. That would be nice. I'm gonna say, well, because it's my mountain, comedy and humor will help me to get to where I need to be. So kindness, perseverance, and camaraderie. Maybe that's a better word.
Camaraderie. Okay, awesome.
Friendship, meeting people, funny.
That's awesome. Well, yeah. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today. We really appreciate it.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in today. You can catch the full video podcast on YouTube. The full audio podcast is out on all platforms. And be sure to think of one friend who could benefit from the information we shared with you today and share this podcast with them. Be sure to follow us on Instagram for more content. Thank you.